Hi everyone, it's Holly, and earlier this year I did a month of romance, and in that every day in February I did different romance related topics for romance novel related topics. And one of the things I talked about was genres, and so I decided that maybe I would do like deep dives into more genres. I'm also trying to like expand my own romance reading, kind of pushing my boundaries and my comfort zones. Maybe that will be a part of this experience as well. And so I'm going to start by talking about what I would think of as more of like a cousin to the genre, but I'm not offended if you were to say it's part of romance, and that is chick lit. Some people say women's fiction. I see that. To me, chick lit tends to be a little more light and fluffy and funny, and women's fiction will usually deal with more serious topics, but I totally see the interchange between the two of them. I personally view as a cousin of contemporary romance. This is like a quote I found from Wikipedia, so let me read it. Chick lit consists of heroine-centered narrative that focuses on the trials and tribulations of their individual protagonists. That's like really basic, right? That's just like a word salad, but I think it's true. So chick lit is at its core about a female main character and her life. So a lot of times she's like a young 20-something, maybe in her 30s, and she's, you know, working in the corporate world or doing some sort of job and dealing with those kinds of like just job politics and dating and friends and family, which sounds like every book, but it's not. Like I said, I think chick lit tends to be pretty funny, lighthearted. It's really what you would think of as kind of like a typical beach read novel. It usually does feature romances and to some degree friendships, and like I said, workplace events, experiences, those kinds of things. In addition to the heroines usually being in their 20s or their 30s, they often live in really big cities. A lot of times you see like New York City and London featured prominently in them. It became really popular in the 1990s, and it is still around, but I don't think it's nearly as popular as it used to be. I think to some degree a lot of chick lit books have kind of become contemporary romance, or chick lit has become women's fiction. Kind of like new adult kind of just had to like find its way into romance or young adult. I think that's kind of like what chick lit is. It is commonly a very criticized genre or subgenre. It's usually called trashy, that like the characters are often considered vapid, especially by people who don't read them. They say that they lack any plot. There is often a romance plot, like I said, but it's not usually the main driving focus, which is why I don't personally consider them a straight up romance. Instead, a romance is kind of secondary to the story of this main female protagonist finding her way in life. There can be sex in these books, however, in my experience, they typically are like fade to black scenes or closed door sex scenes. So you might see characters like making out, and then when they fall into bed, you get like a chapter break or a page break. They do usually have very similar covers. You see a lot of bright colors, a lot of shoes, a lot of dresses, a lot of like skylines, those kinds of images. A lot of glitter. There's usually a lot of glitter. So now let's talk about some chick lit that I have personally read and perhaps recommend. For me, my go-to is definitely Sophie Kinsella. She was my first exposure to this genre with Confessions of a Shopaholic, and I do really enjoy it. Now, while I do like Confessions of a Shopaholic, that isn't necessarily what I would recommend. What I would recommend if you were looking to get started, especially if you wanted to start with Sophie Kinsella, is something like 20s Girl, which is one of her best books in my opinion. Man, I need to reread that one, but I know it'll make me cry. That one has kind of like a magical realism element, I don't know. So the main character ends up seeing her dead, I think it's her great aunt, who's trying to find a necklace, and so it's kind of like this bond between them. There is a romance, and it is cute, but it does make me cry, and I love the relationships in it. Relatedly, The Undomestic Goddess by her, I think, is a great great example of high quality chick lit. This one is a little more serious but has tons of comedy and humor, and the main character goes on quite the journey. And then you have I've Got Your Number. I think this one leans a little more towards romance. The romance is a little stronger in here, but is another cute and fun one. I've also read Every Boy's Got One by Meg Cabot, which is an older book. It is written in kind of like an epistolatory form, so it's written in like letters and emails and texts, and I really liked it. It is older, I haven't read it in years, so maybe it doesn't hold up, but I enjoyed it. And then an example, a really popular example of one, is Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding. I actually have read this. I read it in college. I remember not really liking it, but because it's been like 10 years, I'm not sure I can stand by that opinion right now. But it is a very popular one. A lot of people point to Bridget Jones's Diary as being like the beginning of the chick lit genre. I will also leave links down below to lists of chick lit like book recommendations or things that have been tagged as chick lit on Goodreads in case you want to check it out and see what other people think. Personally, I don't agree that all of those books on those lists are chick lit, but that's fine. Other people do, and that is their choice. But those are my thoughts on chick lit, what it is, and some recommendations. And I don't know what I'm gonna do next. I'm probably gonna stay in the contemporary realm for a little bit, but we'll do some contemporary romance subgenres. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any chick lit recommendations for anybody watching this, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Bye!